Archie's got way more spark than George. He was made for the spotlight. Those 12 words, casually dropped by Meghan Markle during a private Hollywood PR summit in early January, hit harder than she probably expected. It might have sounded like harmless mom talk if she wasn't talking about the future King of England, and if the room hadn't been packed with media powerhouses, top-tier strategists, and PR sharks who instantly caught the tension in her tone. People in the audience couldn't believe it. Recordings started circulating. Whispers spread fast, and suddenly Meghan's comment wasn't seen as motherly pride, it was seen as a royal jab. This wasn't some innocent slip-up. One insider called it straight out, a provocation wrapped in vanity. That one comparison, George versus Archie, set off alarm bells inside Buckingham Palace. And how did the palace respond? Not with statements or press leaks, but with cold, calculated silence. Within days, the official royal family website quietly made a massive change. The line of succession page updated with no warning, no explanation, no trace. Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, both names wiped clean from the list, gone from the 6th and 7th spots like they'd never existed. What could have once been brushed off as a tech glitch suddenly felt like a royal thunderclap. The message was loud and clear, the crown was done waiting around. But this shock move wasn't just about Meghan's latest headline-grabbing quote. It was the climax of years of growing cracks, quiet tension and silent rivalry that didn't start when Meghan walked away from the palace. It started the moment she became a mother under the world's harshest spotlight. The public had always been fed the neat, polished version of the story. Archie was born on May 6, 2019 at Portland Hospital in London. Smiles, soft fanfare, limited photos, and endless talk about privacy. It was the perfect royal fairy tale. A royal baby born in a royal city, destined for a royal future. But behind that carefully curated image, something far more complicated had been quietly simmering. By mid-2025, things blew wide open. A shocking leak to the Parliamentary Office for Constitutional Integrity revealed confidential documents that had been sealed under government protection. Among them, a scanned intake form from the Santa Barbara Fertility Center dated April 18, 2019. The details on that paper left even seasoned investigators stunned. The form listed surrogate A under the maternal source section with a note reading, "Donor oocyte non-relative." Meghan Markle's name was there, yes, but not in the biological mother column. Instead, she was clearly marked as intended parent. That one label flipped the entire royal narrative upside down. If true, it meant Archie wasn't born in the UK, wasn't carried by a royal consort, and by strict definition under the Act of Settlement of 1701, wasn't legally eligible for royal succession. This revelation didn't just shake tradition, it tore at the foundation of the monarchy's constitutional rules. And for years, the palace had danced around the whispers. Reporters' questions about Archie's baptism or the suspicious lack of one were brushed off as a private family choice. But behind closed doors, insiders say those whispers were growing louder, and now the paper trail was impossible to ignore. No official photos ever came out from what was supposed to be Archie's christening at St. James's Chapel. None. No attendance list, no archbishop, not even the famous royal font used for generations. All the public got was one blurry photo of Meghan, Harry, and Doria Ragland standing stiffly in front of a fireplace with a baby dressed in an odd, non-traditional outfit. At the time, most people just thought the couple wanted to keep things private, avoiding the non-stop royal circus. But insiders now claim the truth was far more explosive. There was no formal royal christening at all. No Church of England officials approved anything, and no record of ceremony exists in the royal archives. That meant Archie was never formally recognized under the ancient rites that had welcomed every royal baby from Queen Victoria to little Prince George. By 2020, this quiet omission had become a full-blown internal crisis, one serious enough to land on the table during the tense Sandringham summit when Harry and Meghan hashed out their royal exit plan. Hidden deep inside those negotiations was a secret line, Clause 7, Paragraph 3. It stated, "The sovereign shall withhold inquiry or scrutiny into matters of lineage and birth, in exchange for the voluntary withdrawal of public duties, titles, and official representation." In plain terms, the palace agreed to stay silent about Archie's origins as long as Meghan and Harry walked away from royal life. It was a deal of discretion, a royal truce sealed in silence. For a while, it held steady. But everything changed when Meghan sat down with Oprah in 2021 and accused the monarchy of racism. And again, when their 2022 Netflix series painted the royal family as heartless and cold, that fragile peace started to shatter before the world's eyes. When Spare dropped in 2023, it ripped open wounds that had barely healed. Harry's brutal words calling King Charles aloof and Prince William cruel didn't just sting, they detonated what was left of the fragile peace. The quiet truce that once kept everything contained suddenly started to crumble. And by late 2025, the whole situation exploded into chaos after a government audit exposed something jaw-dropping. Investigators found a paper trail buried deep in the sovereign grant's financials, public money meant for royal property maintenance. Hidden there was a string of shady payments routed through a Delaware-based shell company named Arch Genesis LLC. These weren't random transfers. Records showed $95,000 in surrogacy agency fees, $110,000 in legal facilitation costs, $195,000 in medical payments, and another $82,000 listed as a live birth disbursement for candidate 6. Every single one of those payments lined up exactly with the timeline of Archie's supposed 2019 London birth. Even worse, the funds were traced back to the Frogmore Cottage renovation budget. Money meant for refurbishing royal property, not paying for secret medical procedures overseas. In that moment, the palace wasn't just facing whispers, it was staring down a full-blown scandal involving taxpayer funds and the royal bloodline itself. The breaking point was undeniable. The evidence was there, documented, itemized, signed, and wired. Backed by Princess Anne and with King Charles III's quiet approval, the palace's response was swift and decisive. A royal legal team got to work drafting a letters patent amendment, a document that would forever redefine who qualified for the line of succession. Finalized and signed on January 18, 2026, the ruling hit like a royal earthquake. Its key clause read, "Succession and the rights of title shall be reserved for individuals born of the lawful biological union of a royal descendant and their recognized spouse." One simple line, with explosive consequences. The phrase lawful biological union wasn't vague, it was razor-sharp by design. That wording made Meghan's children officially ineligible for royal succession retroactively and permanently. Within just 36 hours, Archie and Lilibet's names vanished from the royal family's website, gone without a trace. Meghan's supporters called it petty vengeance. Her critics called it long overdue justice. But behind palace walls, staff whispered a single word, closure. It all connected back to an earlier moment few had truly understood. On January 4, 2020, Queen Elizabeth II had personally signed her final set of letters patent regarding royal titles. It was described by insiders as a quiet but thunderous act, one that set a boundary no one could cross. That cold winter morning, the Queen's private secretary hand-delivered the sealed papers to the Lord Chamberlain's office, marking the last time Her Majesty would personally define the royal bloodline. According to those documents, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis would all retain full HRH styling and even gain enhanced ceremonial privileges as direct heirs to the throne. But Archie? He was left off completely. No titles, no recognition, nothing. Historians later argued the decision was consistent with royal precedent, but to Meghan, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. She saw it as a deliberate snub, a message wrapped in royal protocol. What the public didn't know was that Meghan had quietly been fighting this battle weeks before the Queen's formal announcement. Behind the scenes, she petitioned the palace, insisting that denying Archie a title was not only unfair, it was discriminatory. Reports claim she told aides the move carried coded bias. Those words rocked the Queen's inner circle. One palace courtier, speaking anonymously to the Times, recalled the monarch's reaction, an icy silence that said more than any statement ever could. Her Majesty does not assign titles as a form of affection, they are constitutional roles, not commodities. That was the firm message from behind palace doors, and it cut through every rumor with royal precision. But to Meghan, that explanation was unacceptable, cold, even insulting. In her eyes, it wasn't just about titles, it was about fairness, about recognition. When she sat down for that explosive Oprah interview in 2021, Meghan dropped a subtle but powerful hint about this very clash. "There's a lot that was happening behind the scenes that people didn't know," she said softly before adding, "The idea that the first member of color in the family wouldn't have the same title as others, it just didn't sit right with me." To millions watching, it sounded like a heartbreaking story of racial injustice. But inside Buckingham Palace, it was viewed as something even more volatile, a dangerous narrative war that risked dragging royal children into the public battlefield. True to her nature, Queen Elizabeth stayed publicly silent. No interviews, no statements, just her signature calm composure. But privately, she reportedly made it clear to her closest advisors, Archie's lack of title had nothing to do with race, and everything to do with royal duty. Prince William's children were being raised inside the institution, trained for service from birth. Prince Harry's children, by contrast, were being raised outside the royal system entirely. That was the dividing line, duty versus distance. For Meghan, the sting never faded. Hurt, angry, and living an ocean away, she saw the move as unforgivable. The bitterness only deepened after the Platinum Jubilee, when young Prince George stood proudly beside his father, mother, and the Queen on the Buckingham Palace balcony, smiling, waving, radiating confidence to the world. It was a touching royal moment. To Meghan, it was salt in an old open wound. Meghan wasn't invited to the inner balcony circle during the Platinum Jubilee, and Archie and Lilibet stayed behind in California. To her, that message couldn't have been clearer. One family was royal, the other was irrelevant. That sting reportedly fueled her growing conviction that the monarchy wasn't just old-fashioned, it was rigged. People close to Meghan say she started calling the Windsor hierarchy a manufactured caste system where children weren't valued for who they were but for how perfectly they fit the royal mold. When King Charles took the throne in September 2022, Meghan quietly saw a window of opportunity. Behind the scenes, she hoped Charles might extend a new letters patent, one that would finally grant Archie and Lilibet the HRH styling she believed they deserved. But once again, tradition stood firm. King Charles followed his late mother's path, no new titles, no special exceptions. Meanwhile, Prince William and Princess Catherine stepped seamlessly into their elevated roles as the new Prince and Princess of Wales. The symbolism was impossible to miss. It marked a royal reset, a clear statement of where the monarchy's future truly lay. Young Prince George's preparation for kingship began to accelerate fast. His education at Lambrook School quietly expanded to include special visits to the Royal Archives, military engagements, and early lessons from the College of Arms. He was being molded for destiny, step by step. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Archie's life couldn't have looked more different. Photos of California birthday parties and celebrity playdates filled social media, turning him into a figure of Instagram, not ceremony. That sharp contrast in image, privilege, and perception has become Meghan's fuel. By publicly comparing Archie to George, she's not just asking for recognition anymore, she's on a mission to rewrite the royal story itself. A new version built around injustice, favoritism, and the coldness she believes still rules behind the palace gates. What Meghan doesn't seem to understand, at least according to royal insiders, is that the monarchy has never been about personal entitlement. It's about duty, sacrifice, and the weight of centuries of continuity. Prince George was born into a world of responsibility, expectation, and endless public scrutiny, while Archie was born into something completely different: freedom. One child carries the legacy of 1,000 years of tradition. The other runs barefoot in Malibu sunshine wearing sneakers and a floppy hat, and that, insiders say, is the real difference. But Meghan's not done shaking the royal tree. Coming next, her boldest move yet, a rebranding strategy so provocative it's got Buckingham Palace buzzing. Just weeks before the explosive car auction scandal, eagle-eyed royal watchers spotted something odd buried in California's state trademark filings. A new label had quietly appeared, Royal Reclamation, registered under a holding company linked to Arcuel Enterprises. The product list made jaws drop: children's loungewear, printed family crests, glossy storybooks about lost birthrights, and most shocking of all, a toddler t-shirt with the slogan "Future Monarch, just not yours." At first, palace aides rolled their eyes, brushing it off as yet another Meghan vanity project. But that tune changed fast once the marketing campaign launched. A dramatic 3-minute teaser video dropped exclusively on Meghan's Instagram. It opened with slow-motion shots of young Archie running through a sunlit California orchard, laughter echoing through the trees. Then came Meghan's voiceover, soft, emotional, and defiant. "Every child deserves their full inheritance, their full story." The screen then cut sharply to rare vintage footage of Queen Elizabeth's coronation, the golden crown glinting under cathedral light. It was more than a promo, it was a statement. And inside the palace, jaws tightened as whispers began. Was Meghan turning her personal feud with the monarchy into a full-blown commercial empire? The teaser video's final moments hit like a bombshell. Meghan's footage of young Archie slowly faded into black and white clips from her own royal wedding, her smiling, waving, walking down the aisle, and then in bold letters across the screen, the words appeared: "Royal blood doesn't fade, it fights back." The message couldn't have been clearer. Behind palace doors, officials were stunned. This wasn't just a marketing campaign, it was a rebellion wrapped in luxury fabric. As one senior courtier told the Royal Gazette under strict anonymity, this wasn't branding, it was an insurgency in cashmere. Prince William was reportedly briefed that same evening. His reaction: controlled fury. He didn't want a public war, but he wasn't going to let this slide either. Sources say he gave his team precise orders: do not escalate, do not engage, but protect the crown, protect George. It was a line in the sand, a quiet defense of the monarchy's image and his son's legacy. Then came the moment that truly set off alarms inside Buckingham Palace. Princess Catherine, ever observant, spotted something deeply unsettling in the Royal Reclamation catalog. Among the soft toys and printed tees was a children's picture book, and its story hit far too close to home. The illustrations showed two boys, one dark-haired, standing in the shadows while the other, blonde, beaming, was being crowned by older royals. The tale, titled The Little Lionheart, told of a jealous court stealing the rightful heir's crown and handing it to another child. The imagery was unmistakable. It mirrored Archie and Prince George. The book's tone dripped with betrayal, exclusion, and royal theft. For Princess Catherine, who has always balanced motherly devotion with her role as protector of royal tradition, this wasn't just distasteful, it was a violation. She was livid, one palace staffer admitted. That book crossed a sacred line. That was the moment Princess Catherine realized something chilling. Meghan wasn't just upset anymore, she was rewriting royal history. And in doing so, she was treading on dangerous ground. Within hours, legal teams across the palace were mobilized. The College of Arms was called in to investigate whether Meghan's Royal Reclamation brand had illegally used royal emblems or protected insignia in its designs. Buckingham Palace even issued a rare internal memo, a quiet but firm warning that no member of the Sussex household had authorization to commercialize royal titles, iconography, or institutional language. It was the monarchy drawing its line in stone. But instead of backing off, Meghan doubled down. On February 6th, she appeared at a high-profile Santa Barbara event billed as a fireside talk on modern legacies. What sounded like a calm panel soon turned into a powerful speech about heritage theft. Without naming names, Meghan's message was crystal clear and cutting. When systems deny children their name, their title, their truth, she declared, we have a duty to correct the story. The audience erupted in applause, but across the Atlantic, tempers flared. Social media exploded within hours. British tabloids branded the controversy Titlegate, while hashtags like #NotMyPrince and Royal Grift took over feeds worldwide. In the US, many progressive voices rallied behind Meghan, praising her courage to challenge royal injustice. But in the UK, the backlash was brutal. A YouGov poll released on February 10th revealed plummeting public support for the Sussexes, especially among older generations who saw the move as cashing in on royal wounds that never healed. Even usually neutral commentators began to question the ethics of turning royal family drama into a money-making brand. And then came the quietest but most devastating response of all, a discreet, carefully worded statement from within the palace itself. It didn't name Meghan, it didn't need to. The silence between the lines spoke volumes. That same day, a quiet yet powerful statement broke through the media noise, issued not by the palace but by Sir Alistair Wellesley, the Queen's former press secretary. Speaking on behalf of no one, yet clearly channeling the sentiments of countless courtiers, his words struck deep. There is something grotesque in weaponizing a child's future against another's inheritance. That is not reform, that is revenge. For the House of Windsor, it was both a warning and a declaration. The message was unmistakable. Meghan's campaign had shifted from seeking justice to something darker, dethronement by narrative. And while the world debated her veiled comparisons between Archie and George, the monarchy stayed characteristically silent. No press conference, no televised rebuttal, just that familiar icy calm. But behind the scenes at Windsor, the royal response was already in motion. And it didn't start with a statement, it started with a symbol. On February 16th, during a children's education charity event in Leeds, Princess Catherine made a subtle yet seismic appearance. She wore Queen Elizabeth II's Jubilee Star brooch, a rarely seen heirloom reserved only for reigning monarchs or their direct heirs. The placement wasn't random either. The brooch gleamed beside a dark navy sash of the Royal Victorian Order, representing loyalty, honor, and hereditary trust. Royal watchers instantly recognized the message. Catherine didn't need words. The jewelry spoke for her. Lady Vera Montagu, a former royal dresser, later remarked, she didn't have to say anything. That brooch said it all. George is the heir, the crown has already chosen. Within hours, royal forums and social feeds lit up with analysis. The brooch became the headline, the unspoken answer to weeks of chaos, a silent yet glittering reminder of who truly carries the crown's future. The contrast between Meghan's fiery words and Catherine's quiet but powerful symbolism set the internet ablaze. Within just 48 hours, the hashtag #ChosenHeir was trending higher than Meghan's own campaign slogans. Online debates exploded. Was Catherine sending a message, or was it simply royal tradition on display? Behind the palace gates, though, insiders revealed the timing wasn't accidental at all. It was strategic. That same day, February 16th, King Charles signed a confidential addendum to the Windsor Charter of Succession, a private legal document meant only for the inner circle. According to sources close to the Privy Council, the addendum reaffirmed one crucial point. Only the direct descendants of the heir apparent, Prince William, shall receive hereditary titles and associated privileges without explicit parliamentary approval. It wasn't a new rule, but a sharp reinforcement of the old order. And for those watching the growing war of legacy between Meghan and the monarchy, the move read like a royal warning shot. King Charles knew the world was watching. He knew Meghan's messaging risked stirring doubts about Prince George's future as heir, but instead of trading blows in the media, Charles chose a different battlefield, the official record. Royal historian Dr. Simon Copley summed it up perfectly. It's as if he said, let the record speak louder than the tabloids. Then came an even more unexpected twist. Just a week later, Princess Catherine extended a rare private invitation to BBC journalist Eloise Merton, a respected neutral royal chronicler. The two met for an exclusive on-the-record interview, not for TV but for print. The resulting piece, published in the Sunday Times under the headline "The Making of a Future Queen," offered a calm yet unmistakable counterpoint to Meghan's storm. Buried deep in the third column was a single quote that set off international headlines and ignited a whole new chapter in this royal saga. "Every child deserves love, but not every child is destined to lead." Those words, spoken calmly yet sharply by Princess Catherine, landed like a royal thunderclap. "That path isn't granted by emotion or drama," she continued, "it's carved by service." She never mentioned Meghan by name, but everyone knew exactly who she was referring to. Her tone, icy, regal, unbothered, was the very definition of quiet power. As one senior aide later said, "Catherine doesn't raise her voice, she raises the standard." While Catherine's poised remarks dominated headlines, pressure on the Sussexes was quietly mounting behind the scenes. A leaked email from a marketing agency working with Arcuel revealed growing panic. Executives expressed serious concerns about public backlash tied to Meghan's royal reclamation brand. Retail partners were backing out, terrified of the PR storm, and a children's clothing launch was suddenly postponed indefinitely. Even Netflix, once one of the couple's biggest allies, began quietly scrubbing mentions of untold royal truths from its promos. But Meghan refused to back down. On February 20th, she made her next move during a podcast appearance on Truth Unfiltered. The episode lit up the internet. There, she claimed that Queen Elizabeth's decision to withhold royal titles from Archie and Lilibet back in 2022 had been a cruel personal slight and accused the crown of selective bloodline favoritism. The problem? The facts didn't line up. Official documents clearly showed that titles of prince and princess are automatically extended only to grandchildren of the reigning monarch through the male line. At the time of Archie's birth, Queen Elizabeth was still alive, meaning the rule hadn't yet applied. In reality, the late Queen had followed royal protocol exactly. In fact, she'd even left the door open for Meghan and Harry to retain active royal roles if they chose to. But Meghan's words reframed the past as a deliberate betrayal, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Just 2 days after that explosive podcast aired, Princess Charlotte made her first public appearance in months, accompanying her mother to a London school visit. Cameras flashed as the young princess stepped out of the car, clutching a small red folder stamped with a golden seal, "Future of the Crown Education Trust." To the public, it was a sweet moment, a daughter walking in her mother's footsteps. But to royal watchers, it was crystal clear the Windsors were making their own statement, wordlessly and powerfully. The next generation's future wasn't just secure, it was already in motion. It was a quiet moment, but a thunderous message. One royal commentator on GB News summed it up perfectly. While Meghan weaponizes Archie's absence, Catherine fortifies Charlotte's presence. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One mother speaking of exclusion, the other quietly demonstrating succession in action. But the final blow to Meghan's narrative didn't come from an interview, an Instagram post, or even a symbolic brooch. It came from something far older and infinitely more powerful, a royal document. Hidden deep within the archives of Windsor, it was about to change everything. While Meghan continued to insist her children had been denied what was rightfully theirs, she had no idea that Queen Elizabeth II herself had already made her wishes clear, long before her passing. That decision was sealed away in a private letter scheduled to be revealed by Easter. The letter carried a single heading, "The Future of the Crown." Beneath it, just one name. The document was stored under Kensington Protocol 14C, a classification for materials sealed during a monarch's lifetime and opened only under special authorization. That authorization finally came on February 29, 2026, following weeks of public backlash against Meghan's renewed campaign to portray Archie and Lilibet as unfairly excluded heirs. In a quiet ceremony at the Royal Archives, the cream-colored envelope was retrieved. Its wax seal, deep red, unbroken, still bore the Queen's insignia. On the back, written in her unmistakable cursive hand, were 5 chilling words: "To be opened when tested." Inside, archivists found a single handwritten page dated October 5, 2022, less than a month before the Queen's death. It wasn't a will, it wasn't a decree, it was something far more personal, a private letter addressed to Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, marked "Strict Confidence." It began with calm authority. "I have seen enough character, enough conduct in the matter of inheritance and example." The tone was unmistakable. The Queen had made her judgment long before the world even realized there was a question to answer. And though the rest of the letter had yet to be revealed, one thing was clear. The late Queen hadn't left the future of the crown up for debate. She had already written the truth, sealed it, and entrusted it to history itself. "I place my trust in William, Catherine, and their children. Let George bear the crown. Let Charlotte uphold its dignity. Let Louis protect its grace. Titles not earned are not owed. Those who abandon duty cannot claim its privilege. Elizabeth R. Within hours of that letter's quiet disclosure to senior royal officials, a wave rippled through Buckingham Palace. It wasn't a legal order, but it didn't need to be. Symbolically, it was earth-shattering. The Queen, known for her lifelong restraint and neutrality, had spoken from beyond the grave with unmistakable clarity. Her message left no room for speculation. Archie and Lilibet were not part of her vision for the monarchy's future. It was the final strike in what insiders now call the monarchy's quiet war of legitimacy. By that evening, King Charles had summoned a private council including Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince William. No cameras, no press statements, no leaks, just a closed-door meeting that confirmed what the public had long suspected: the royal line had officially hardened. From that moment forward, Archie and Lilibet would retain only the technical titles of Prince and Princess granted under King George V's 1917 decree, but nothing more. No public funding, no royal patronages, and no ceremonial standing. The House of Windsor had drawn its final boundary. There would be no more two versions of the monarchy. One line, one legacy, and it would begin and end with George. But if the palace thought that letter would silence Meghan, they were mistaken. Just 2 days later, she struck back. This time not through speeches or trademarks, but through the glossy pages of a Los Angeles magazine. Her new essay, Through a Mother's Eyes, was presented as a deeply emotional reflection on love, lineage, and identity. Yet buried beneath the poetic metaphors and polished prose were unmistakable jabs, subtle, sharp lines about a family that forgets its own blood, and institutions that confuse tradition with compassion. Readers could feel the sting. It wasn't just a mother's lament, it was a counterattack dressed in elegance. Royal commentators were quick to note that Meghan had moved the battle once again from the throne room to the court of public opinion. And while the Windsors stood united behind their sealed history, Meghan was still determined to rewrite it. In her words, for the children who were born royal but raised free. It is difficult to explain to a child why some cousins wear crowns and others wear expectations. A little boy asks why his name is not on the gate, and I must tell him because some gates were welded shut before he was born. Those were Meghan's words, haunting, poetic, and immediately polarizing. To her supporters, the passage from her Through a Mother's Eyes essay was moving, a mother's raw reflection on exclusion and inequality. But to her critics, it was pure manipulation cloaked in emotion. Royal biographer Helena Fairmont didn't mince words on Sky News. What Meghan is doing now isn't just rewriting history, it's calculated character assassination, she said sharply. She's taking aim at a grandmother who can't respond and at an institution that already gave her more grace than tradition required. The backlash was instant and fierce. Within days, several major charities that had previously partnered with Arkwell under the impression of apolitical humanitarian work began to distance themselves. Press releases rolled out in careful language, but the message was clear. Partnerships were on pause. Even Save the Children UK, where Meghan once served as a guest advocate, issued a diplomatic yet cutting statement. The organization would be refocusing on non-royal family narratives. The ripple effect was undeniable. Her foundation's image had been shaken. But while the public debated Meghan's motives, the most decisive response came from inside the palace itself, from none other than Princess Anne. Known for her no-nonsense discipline and deep loyalty to the crown, Anne made her stance unmistakably clear. In a confidential memo to the Sovereign Council, later confirmed by a senior aide, she wrote, "The integrity of the crown must not be auctioned to the loudest bidder. While we remain silent publicly, we must be ruthless administratively. No crest, no title, no association may be used by any party for brand leverage without approval. This is not punishment, this is preservation." Those words carried royal steel. And true to form, Princess Anne personally oversaw the palace's next steps. Within 48 hours, official cease and desist notices were dispatched to multiple vendors across the UK and the US, each one selling Windsor-themed merchandise allegedly linked to the Sussex children. From jewelry engraved with Princess Lilibet to nursery decor using royal-style fonts and insignias, the crackdown was swift and unforgiving. Anne's message to the world and to Meghan was clear. The monarchy might stay silent, but it was no longer standing still. One of the first targets of the palace's legal crackdown was a high-end babywear label based in California. Within hours of discovery, the company received a formal takedown order. The palace's legal protection office had compiled a staggering 73-page dossier detailing unauthorized trademark use, including one shocking violation: the brand's promotional images had featured King George VI's coat of arms. The message was crystal clear: the monarchy would not allow sentiment, marketing, or emotional manipulation to dilute its centuries-old authority. But what happened next took the entire controversy to another level and straight onto international front pages. Princess Catherine was officially named honorary patron of the Queen Elizabeth II Legacy Trust, a newly launched royal initiative dedicated to digitizing and preserving the late Queen's handwritten letters, speeches, and private reflections. It was a project rooted in legacy, one that symbolically reasserted who truly carried forward the monarchy's voice in history. At the unveiling ceremony, Catherine stood gracefully beside a glass display containing the now famous sealed letter from Queen Elizabeth, the same one declaring her faith in William, Catherine, and their children. Cameras flashed, but Catherine remained calm and deliberate. She never once mentioned Meghan, yet her words cut through the noise louder than any headline could. "Some words are too enduring to be shouted," she said softly. "They only require us to read and remember." Those 15 words echoed across continents. Within hours, they were splashed across headlines from Sydney to Toronto, Berlin to Boston. News anchors replayed the clip on loop. Royal analysts dissected every pause, every syllable, and the world understood exactly what was being said without it ever being said aloud. For anyone still wondering whether the Crown would tolerate Meghan's campaign of comparisons and veiled accusations, the answer had arrived, written in ink, sealed by a sovereign, and now displayed under glass for the world to see. The message was undeniable. The children of William weren't just heirs, they were anointed. The monarchy had reasserted its legacy with elegance and precision. Yet even as Catherine's quiet power reshaped the narrative, one truth was clear. The firestorm Meghan had ignited with her comparisons between Archie and George wasn't dying down. It was evolving, escalating, and pulling the royal family into a battle between history, perception, and the power of story itself. Public trust in the monarchy's silence was starting to crack. The world wanted answers, and at exactly 11 a.m., the Crown delivered one. An official statement was released from Clarence House, signed by Sir Clive Alderton, King Charles's private secretary. But the tone, it carried the unmistakable weight of unity. King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne speaking as one royal voice. The statement read, "Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's wishes regarding succession, titles, and ceremonial designations were recorded and honored. The Crown does not owe explanation for decisions that align with tradition, law, and personal discretion. No child of this realm shall be diminished for the elevation of another. Any use of royal designations, likeness, or inferred status by private individuals for commercial or reputational leverage will be reviewed under the Crown Protection Act and referred to appropriate legal channels. We remain guided by service, not self-interest." The tone was cool, formal, but the consequences were devastatingly clear. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. This was a constitutional line in the sand. The monarchy had spoken, not through gossip or retaliation, but through the power of protocol. And behind that carefully worded line, "No child shall be diminished for the elevation of another," was a woman who refused to stay quiet, Princess Catherine. Sources later revealed that she had personally insisted the phrase remain in the statement. For her, it wasn't about rhetoric, it was about protecting her son. She had watched in frustration as tabloids twisted George's name into clickbait, framing his childhood as a competition with Archie's as though royal destiny were a social media poll. According to one insider, Catherine drew her own invisible line the moment Meghan allowed George's name to become, as the aide put it, a stepping stool for sympathy. To Catherine, that was unacceptable, and while the statement represented royal unity, her actions showed maternal defiance. That very same day, without press fanfare or official notice, Princess Catherine made an unannounced visit to St. Thomas's Children's Hospital in London. Cameras caught her walking in alone, no entourage, wearing a simple navy coat and a small brooch shaped like a crown. Her appearance wasn't about publicity, it was purpose. As she knelt beside children's beds, listening and smiling softly, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The future queen wasn't hiding behind palace gates, she was out in the open, serving. And in that quiet act of compassion, Catherine had done what the monarchy has always done best, turned dignity into power and silence into statement. Cameras captured the moment perfectly. Princess Catherine crouched beside a 6-year-old cancer patient, gently adjusting the boy's tiny toy crown and whispering something that made him beam with joy. No entourage, no press announcement, just quiet compassion and presence. That single image swept across global headlines within hours, flipping the entire royal narrative. For the first time in weeks, Meghan was no longer the story. Catherine was. But the momentum didn't stop there. Days later, Prince William took the stage at a youth leadership summit in Birmingham. His speech began as a reflection on civic duty and community, but halfway through, his tone shifted. Looking straight into the audience, he said firmly, "Every child is born with dignity, but leadership, legacy, and titles must be earned through service, not through birthright alone, not through inheritance, and certainly not through comparison." The crowd erupted in applause. Across the nation, the words hit home. Commentators immediately called it a masterclass in subtle rebuttal, a message that needed no names but left no doubt. Meanwhile, over in California, Meghan's media strategy began to unravel. Her follow-up podcast, Royal Truths from a Mother's Heart, released under Archewell Studios, saw disappointing numbers, barely half its expected listenership. Early reviews were lukewarm, but what truly sparked outrage wasn't what she said, it was what she showed. In one segment, Meghan spoke emotionally about how no child should grow up feeling like a shadow. But eagle-eyed viewers on YouTube noticed something alarming in the blurred background. A framed photo unmistakably featuring Prince George at the 2023 Trooping the Color event, wearing his bright red ceremonial jacket. The image, while slightly out of focus, was quickly identified by royal watchers as an official copyrighted palace photograph. Within hours, the palace's legal office moved into action. A formal takedown notice was issued to every streaming platform hosting the episode, citing unauthorized use of royal imagery. Spotify, YouTube, and several podcast aggregators complied immediately, pulling the episode offline pending review. By the next morning, headlines around the world had shifted once again. Meghan's attempt to highlight her maternal struggle had been eclipsed by another controversy, and Catherine's image from the hospital visit remained everywhere. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. One royal speaking through compassion, another through complaint. In the court of public opinion, the shift was complete. The future queen had reclaimed the narrative, not with words but with grace. Spotify and YouTube both complied within hours. The episode was gone. Meghan's legal team fired back almost immediately, accusing Buckingham Palace of censorship through intimidation. But by then, the tide of public sentiment had already shifted, and not in her favor, even among former supporters. Exhaustion was setting in. The constant royal friction, the endless comparisons, it had all begun to feel like too much. The narrative that a mother could lift up her own child by quietly undermining another, especially another child being raised for a life of constitutional service, simply didn't sit right anymore. The optics had turned against her. Soon, several major UK broadcasters announced a new policy. They would no longer feature or promote Archewell-linked content unless it came with verified third-party fact-checking. The once open media doors were closing fast. Even lifestyle brands that had built entire campaigns around Meghan's modern Duchess image began backing away, one after another, pulling out of collaborations and sponsorship deals. But the most dramatic shift didn't come from the press. It came from inside the royal circle itself. After weeks of silence, Prince Harry was spotted at Heathrow Airport, arriving alone. Speculation ran wild. Was he there to reconcile or to face the fallout? Reports soon confirmed that he traveled straight to Gatcombe Park for a private meeting with Princess Anne. According to insiders, the meeting lasted less than an hour. It was described as tense, quiet, and painfully direct. When reporters later asked Princess Anne if reconciliation was possible, her reply was cuttingly cold. One cannot reconcile with tactics. That single sentence exploded across UK social media, trending for 3 days straight. It became the quote of the week, plastered across headlines and meme pages alike, a royal warning wrapped in precision and frost. Back in California, Meghan tried one last time to pivot the story. She announced a live-stream charity auction, hoping to reframe the narrative through philanthropy. Appearing in a flowing white dress, seated beside a polished mahogany table, she smiled as she presented children's books, dainty tiaras, and even items described as royal baby memorabilia. But as the stream went live, the contrast couldn't have been starker. In the UK, royal duty was unfolding quietly and efficiently. Across the Atlantic, Meghan was on camera fighting to reclaim control of a story that had already moved on. The live stream was titled A Future for Archie and Lilibet. On paper, it sounded heartfelt, a mother's vision for her children's legacy. But even this final act came wrapped in controversy. Viewers quickly noticed that one of the small tiaras on display looked suspiciously similar to the miniature coronet given to Princess Charlotte at her first state banquet. Within minutes, social media was ablaze with side-by-side photos and speculation. Was it a replica? A gift? Or was Meghan intentionally blurring royal lines to imply continuity where none existed? The comments section flooded with accusations and disbelief. And then abruptly, the stream was cut off after just 32 minutes. No donation totals were shown, no follow-up statements released. Silence? That night, the royal press office broke its own long-held rule of restraint and issued an official late-night clarification. No royal memorabilia has been gifted, sold, or auctioned by the royal household to private parties. By morning, the damage was done and irreversible. Across headlines and broadcasts, the story shifted from pity to critique. What had begun as Meghan's attempt to reframe her children's royal identity had imploded into a global cautionary tale. In the end, her campaign to elevate Archie by drawing comparisons to Prince George had backfired spectacularly. Instead of winning sympathy, it revealed a harsher truth, one that has defined the monarchy for centuries. The crown does not compete. It does not argue its worth. It does not explain its heirs. It simply endures. And with every comparison Meghan tried to craft, She only widened the gap she sought to close. Archie wasn't denied greatness, he was denied entitlement. Not by the institution that guards history, but by those who tried to bend it to their will. The monarchy, centuries old and unshaken, stood where it always had, untouchable, unbothered, unbroken. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment below. Tell us, what do you think about this royal saga? Should tradition stay unshaken, or was Meghan right to challenge the crown? Your thoughts might just start the next big conversation.